All right, hi everybody. So glad to see you all here today. Thank you a lot for coming out. Thank you for being here to celebrate the launch of issue 3 and simultaneously issue 2 because we didn't do a party for issue 2 during the summer. So we're all here to do both of those at the same time. Big thanks to everybody here, and big thanks to everybody that read the magazine. If you haven't gotten a chance to read it yet, it's for free online. Magazine1.com. Again, that's Magazine-1. You need that hyphen in there. If you just type Magazine1, I don't know what happens, so please don't do that. The third issue is right there on the front page. Wonderful cover image by Moe Hewitt, a painter based out of Tallahassee right now. She did a beautiful painting of an oncoming storm as she formerly lived in the Gulf Coast alongside us. And before we get started with the reading, I have a few, just a brief statement that I'd like to make, that I think, just kind of talking about this a little bit. And I kind of just wanted to talk about, what it is to be an editor, necessarily, and how that feels. Because when I was telling people that the latest issue of the magazine was out, a lot of people like to say, congratulations to me. But I didn't feel like I really did anything. Because all of the work is inside of the magazine, written by writers and artists that are the true substance of what this sort of project is. I might sit around and sit through the submission pile to find the pieces that stand out, but they were already there before I saw them. The work was already done. I just put it on display. And it's this act of finding that makes this worth doing. To venture through what can feel like an almost endless string of not quite rights and even more this is terribles, to find something that seems to stand up on the page and declare itself as like, this is good, no really, this is actually good, it can be such an exciting moment that I'll stand up from my chair. I'll be shocked by it. There's nothing like that feeling of finding something special, and having the knowledge that I'm one of the first people to actually see this art in its infancy. To know that the person that sent it to me trusts me enough to know that I know that they know that what they've made is good, and that it can stir something in people beyond just myself. And it's a feeling I'm really grateful for. So I hope that tonight, as you listen to the words of some of our contributors, you can experience a little bit of that feeling for yourself, because even though I might have been one of the first people to encounter this, you too are some of the first people to encounter this work. It's not known. This is art that is in its infancy. So take that pleasure of knowing that you are experiencing something truly new, and know what it is to encounter that newness. Thank you. And I hope that you can enjoy this experience as much as I get to enjoy it. And with that, I want to bring our first contributor up to the podium. This is Devin Johnson. He is an autistic poet, essayist, and visual artist based in Sarasota, Florida, serving as a fine art and cultural critic for Magazine1. His approach towards writing is influenced most by his younger brother, spirituality, music, antique and thrift shopping, and art therapy techniques. And with that, I hand it over to you, Devin.
All right. Before I were to proceed, I would like to thank you all very much for this valuable opportunity.
Bring this up a little bit, man.
Yes, please, thank you.
They're good?
There was ideal.
Perfect.
Let me know if you can hear me.
I can hear you.
All right. Before I were to proceed with the beginning and of this piece, I would like to thank you all for this valuable opportunity. I've been battling depression and self-esteem issues for years, constantly wondering if my material was worth any kind of respect or admiration, and this has helped me put my fears and insecurities to rest. This has helped me fight through the battles which have been assailing me for years. And with that, I would like to present this political piece that I wrote, titled Eye of the Storm. As of October 15th, 2024, the John and Mabel Ringling Museum of Art in Sarasota, Florida was reopened for only a day with free admission due to the crippling effects that Hurricanes Helene and Milton left on the surrounding region. Twisted, fallen tree limbs and scattered plant matter blocked off large portions of the campus. Split branches damaged the roof of the closed circus museum, and the Catazan manor was flooded in the basement by Helene before Milton lifted 2 offshore boats from the water and threw them onto the harbor when I visited the facility. And yet the museum was largely spared in comparison to the other parts of Florida. Numerous homes in vulnerable areas were filled with anywhere from 2 to 4 feet of rainwater. Towering piles of debris still lined the streets and roads. Electricity was cut off to millions of households. Mass evacuations drained the state of gas until it was unavailable for hundreds of miles, when the countless Floridians who exited the state were forced to return. Those who ultimately had to stay and endure Helene's or Milton's wrath were largely the people without an escape route, a source of financial backing, or any kind of alternate plan or means of starting over. Their belongings to be carried away as the storms returned to the open Gulf. Starting late into December, shortly before the storms formed, and spending the majority of October closed, the newest exhibition for the Ringling Museum of Art, Enduring Light, could not have been more important and poignant for such a difficult era of turmoil and change for such vulnerable people. The show consists solely of the works of 2 innovative photographers, Roy DeCarava and Danny Lyon, and their statements on the changes within the poor and black communities of the north and south stretches of the U.S., as well as each crisis that assailed and continues to torment young and old, apolitical bystanders and active revolutionaries alike. While it was not specifically the weather at fault for the suffering in the space DeCarava and Lyon inhabited, Helene and Milton are an extension and continuation of factors placed against an already susceptible, struggling, and growing community. Should I continue? Born at the center of the Harlem Renaissance, Roy DeCarava's artistic training and painterly approach prominently color his 12 photographers series with poise and undeniable proficiency. He consistently casts each of his subjects in a dim glow amidst a backdrop of velvet-like shadows, and yet even with the intense chiaroscuro, it adds to the warmth and intimacy of the subject matter. For couple dancing, 2 embracing bodies are gently locked together as one in an enveloping veil of darkness. Their only source of soft light presumably being the flash of the camera or a lone unseen lamp, like the music caught between the hisses and pops of a vinyl record's dusty grooves. The faint highlights stand out amidst the shade of a late night. It and Night Feeding, which features only the smiling face and fuzzy silhouette of a mother peering down at the newborn child she is nursing, feel personal without being perverse or encroaching, private but not voyeuristic. The smoky atmosphere of man and window and across the street, night, conveying the center of 50s Brooklyn, faint lights pouring from apartment windows and bleeding into the surrounding streets. That is my excerpt from now. I hope you enjoyed it.
Great job.
That was great. Excellent. Really good.
Thank you so much, Devin. That was awesome. I'm going to be reading a piece that is actually by a contributor that couldn't be here tonight, given that she lives in New York City and not here. Her name is Nancy Lane. She was born in New York City, but has lived and worked most of her life in France and Italy. Her writings have been read at St. Malachi's, the Actors Chapel in New York City, and published in Women's Voices and Change and Magazine1. Weird. She is also a founding member of the Actors and Writers Workshop, which provides opportunities for women and men to workshop audition pieces, try out original stories, and hold table reads for theatrical, television, and film scripts. This is the piece, Abyssinia, by Nancy Lane. I wished him dead so often, I can't believe it's finally happening. I can't take back all the times I hurried across the street to avoid running into him, all the times I ignored his calls. I'm not sorry, not after the way he treated me. Still, last week, I ran to the hospital when he called to say he was having a heart attack. Today, I sit by his side. He fell apart after my mother died on a steamy August day in 1966, when the temperature hit 92 degrees. After 6 months of mourning and moping, his tears dried and he attended the wedding of a daughter of one of his Army friends. My father was a late World War II draftee and kept in touch with his platoon buddies all his life. At the June 1st midday wedding, to which he wore a blue hopsack blazer with brass buttons, neatly creased gray trousers, a white button-down, long-sleeved, Oxford cloth shirt, a maroon paisley silk tie, maroon cashmere argyle socks held up with matching sock garters and split-shinned leather loafers. He was seated next to a window with the silver-gray hair, who looked at him as if he was a slice of pie a la mode. He was clean-shaven, smelled like royal lime, and had perfectly straight capped teeth, thanks to my mother's insistence. With his crooked but charming smile and a cigarette clamped between his expensive teeth, he introduced himself. Several alcoholic beverages later, something with gin for him, a Dubonnet red for her, they made plans for the next day and evening, and the following day and evening, and so on and so forth. Nights, he came home to sleep in one of the 2 narrow beds my mother had custom made and installed in their bedroom. Mornings, I saw him briefly before I left for the 11th grade. After school, I saw him when I traveled across town to help him empty the window and the glass showcases, stack the velvet-lined trays of antique jewelry in the Acme safe, turn the combination lock, flick off the lights, set the alarm, and close the store. Then he'd go his way and I'd go mine, home for dinner and studying. The store had been my mother's real love. More than anything or anybody, my mother adored her business. My father worked for her. It was an arrangement that suited them both. I often wonder what would have become of my father had he not met my mother. Of course, I also wonder what would have become of my mother if she hadn't met him. She was 27 when they married, and wanted a husband and a family, like her sisters had. He was a 35-year-old closeted homosexual who needed a work, a wife, and family to shade him from the obvious perils of his desires. They were, for better or worse, wedded to each other like 2 mismatched pieces of the same jigsaw puzzle. In every photograph of the 2 of them, he has his arm around her shoulders. She was his life jacket, his Mae West vest. She protected him from a world that ostracized homosexuals. In return, he gave her 2 children and removed the stigma of otherwise certain spinsterhood. After he and the widow had become an item, he forbade me and my sister to talk about our mother or even mention her name. If we tried to, he'd put his hands over his ears and shake his head, like a 4-year-old who doesn't want to be told to drink his milk or eat his peas. Today, those first turbulent years of orphanhood are water under the bridge, past but not forgotten. There will always remain the sting and insult of the day I came home from work to find a wrinkled shopping bag in front of my door overflowing with photos of me that had formerly been displayed in the home I grew up in. He'd swept all traces of me and my childhood existence into that used and torn receptacle. I was devastated at being relegated to trash. But let's return to the hospital room where I am by his bedside. I hold his hand that will no longer wear a size 7 glove and stroke his forehead that will no longer sport a wide-brimmed felt fedora. His horn-rimmed glasses rest on the Formica table next to him. I look into his roomy eyes. When I leave him, at the door I say, Abyssinia, and he replies, so long, Oolong. It is the way we part company, with a pun on our lips. The next day, the nurse who cares for him calls. It is 7 a.m. It's time, she says, and I think of when a TV doctor in a white coat like Marcus Welby, MD, announces that contractions have started. And if it is time for the pregnant woman on the gurney to push because the baby waiting to be born has decided it is time to descend the birth canal. Except this is not an episode of Marcus Welby, and this time, it's time, means it's time for my father to die. I hang up the phone, wash my face, brush my teeth, shower, and dress. I slip my feet into black boots and throw on a jacket. I pull up the collar. It is the Ides of March, and outside, despite the clear skies, it is bitter cold under the harsh white dawn. I light a cigarette, close and lock my apartment door, and take the stairs down 3 flights. I walk 2.5 blocks to the hospital entrance, take a last inhale, and crush out my cigarette in front of the revolving doors. I ride the elevator to 5 and walk down the green hospital corridor with its shiny linoleum floor and flickering overhead lights. The air smells of disinfectants, the fetid fumes of illness and odors of bodily waste. The door to his room is cracked open. When I enter, he is alone except for the nurse. She is a middle-aged woman with pale skin, arthritic hands, dyed hair, and fire-engine red Kewpie doll lips. She stands and motions for me to take her place by his bedside. She withdraws silently into the shadows. In her starched uniform and crepe-soled shoes, she glides phantom-like back to the back of the room. Her head and orange beacon bobs up and down like a neon buoy in the dark sea. My father is bathed in the bright light of a new day, his last. The sun's golden rays stream in through high windows on the far wall. He whispers conspiratorially if he and I are sharing a private moment on a summer holiday. Isn't Switzerland beautiful? He imagines that beyond the room's dull painted walls and industrial abstract art lay the rolling hills of a Swiss village with its cuckoo clocks synchronized to chime on the hour. I do not tell him that beyond his view are the brackish churning waters of the East River. I smile at him and nod. My father has never been to Switzerland. In an unexpected burst of pre-mortem energy, he kicks off the rough sheet to free his feet, and in so doing disrobes his genitals. I replace the sheet quickly and tuck him in. He would be mortified to know he'd exposed himself. My father was self-consciously, preternaturally modest all of his life. As a child, I thought he went to sleep fully dressed, the way I first saw him when he woke me for school. My mother, on the other hand, liked to roam nude through the apartment. In a scene from my childhood, I watch my father lower his bifocals and observe my mother's movements. He follows her form as she walks naked and barefoot into and out of the kitchen scavenging for her cigarettes. He shakes his head. On the counter next to him, where the electric percolator sits, there is the mug of strong coffee, light and sweet. At his elbow, in front of the open Herald Tribune turned to the bridge column, there is a full ashtray. Smoke billows from his mouth, and I hear his daily incantation. Damn it, Dorothy, put some clothes on. My mother ignores him as she makes her way across the hardwood floors through the apartment, passing the paintings, antique objects, and furniture they chose together during their 25 years of married life. Once she locates the pack and extracts the longed-for first cigarette of the day, she curves her fingers around its filter, returns to the kitchen, approaches him, and pushing aside the pages of his newspaper, leans over, her small breast brushing his chin, the talcum powder on her sparse post-hysterectomy down dusting his trousers, and murmurs, "Willie, can you give me a light?" This morning, after I have been with him for an hour watching his shallow, troubled breath and the feeble motion of his chest, the red-headed nurse tells me to walk in and out of the room. Unknown to me, there is a technique to sitting with those on the cusp of death. I do as she says until after one round trip, his eyes open wide and he looks in my direction. Brows raised like he wants to start a conversation about the weather or complain about the hospital food or demand a cigarette. "I'm here, Daddy," I say. When he doesn't speak, I envision lost sentences, words strung together, daisy chains of letters, of vowels and consonants that float to the surface before sinking, one by one, irretrievably into the depths of his dying mind. I squeeze his hand. Like a butterfly seeking a place to land, there is a faint movement of air as he shakes his head. The corners of his mouth slope downward. He uses all the strength left in him to frown at the impending reality of death. Or perhaps, more prosaically, his frown is simply the acknowledgement that Switzerland may not be all it's cracked up to be. I am not cruel to him like he was to me. I do not want him to leave with a heavy heart. That seems a terrible load to carry into the next life, if there is one. His eyes close, and I hope he is dreaming of Charles Gorin's bridge column, of ripping the cellophane off a fresh deck of red and white bicycle cars, of lighting up a filter-tipped cigarette, of grasping an icy Gibson in a sweating glass, and of playing interminable rubbers of bridge with my mother. He does not die in his sleep, as I'm told some do, drifting off peacefully in a morphine-induced coma. No, my father dies wide awake, with his hand and mind still warm, and his hazel eyes with their golden flecks and soft black lashes still open. He stares at me as if we are playing a game where the loser is the one who blinks first. I am shocked at how quickly he travels from here to not here. His wide-eyed expression registers anticipation and surprise. Maybe he sees my mother at the threshold of his hospital room. "Come on, Willie," she says. "I've been waiting for you." I lean down and kiss his cheek. "Goodbye, Daddy," I whisper. Abyssinia. Thank you. And to round out the evening, we have the one and only Bubba Henson. He writes poetry, fiction, and literary criticism in Sarasota, Florida. He loves people.
That's perfect. Perfect. Thank you. Before I begin, I just want to say how incredibly proud I am of what Ben and Georgia and the staff have done with this magazine. I mean, Bookstore 1 is a cultural beacon. It's like a lighthouse in this town. There's so much programming going on here. There's so much to learn, so much to enjoy, so much to savor. And now we have this magazine that is, what's interesting is I was recently taking a course online, and it's taught by this one guy, and now it's gone out of my head, but I was really impressed with this guy, and then I looked and I saw he's in the magazine, and he's from New York, so it was really cool. And here's Ben reading something in New York. Devin, that was a really, really great piece. So I'm really proud of what you're doing, and I'm proud to be a part of it, and I thank you guys for doing that. I think that all readings should begin like this, okay? I was fortunate enough to teach in Africa some time ago, and I had been in country only 3 days. I was teaching in Botswana, in the capital city of Gaborone, and it was on a 100-acre campus, private school, and you had to walk between these little like Quonset huts, and they kind of meandered their way through that orange dirt, that really silty dirt of Florida. And third day in country, and now I'm walking to the class early in the morning, and this was a school that was grade school all the way up through high school. I'm coming around a corner and I hear a really great clamor, like a frightening commotion. Like I hear people screaming, and I'm like, I have no idea what I'm about to come around the corner into. And I come around the corner, and there's this courtyard, and there are probably 100, 150 kids in a circle. And there is this large, and when I say large, I mean large, I'm not talking about little, monkey in the middle of this circle. And he's panicked, okay? And he's just pinballing around this circle, trying to find a way to get out. But the kids are like, they've created this, they've blocked him in. And for some reason, this just struck me as the most hilarious thing in the world. I went into hysterics on the spot. And then these three little girls, who were maybe third grade, they come running up and they attach themselves to my leg. They're like holding on to me, they're scared. And now this monkey, who is trying to find his way out, he has gone this way, and now he's turned, and now this monkey and I make eye contact. And I am the tallest thing in this area, and now he's coming for me, and suddenly it's not so funny anymore. And he comes flying at me, and I recoil backwards, like violently, and I just total these three kids. Like these three kids go flying off of me like bowling pins, right? And now I'm not laughing. And then the monkey turns really quick, and then he heads off this way, and the kids part, and I've got this great cinematic shot of him like going, he runs down this alley like 50 yards, and he gets to the end, and he turns and he looks at me and just goes, hey, like that, and then he just takes off. And so every good reading should begin with a monkey story. That's what I feel. I'm going to begin with the light, and then I'm going to take you into a little bit of the dark. I'm not going to read anything that I've published in the magazine. Here we go. This is called On the Discovery of a Frozen Bar of Chocolate from Admiral Byrd's 1928 expedition. Skewer the marshmallow. Don't singe yet. Crack a corner off of the bar. Put it in a tin cup. Ever so brief. Place it over fire ever so briefly. Don't forget to use tongs, silly. Now brown the marshmallow. Pour the dram of Byrd's chocolate over the treat. Bite into some more from an explorer who brought comfort food on his quest for discovery. That's the first poem. This is the second poem. It's called Flying Modest Mouse-Colored People. There is a Virginia Woolf story, The Mark on the Wall, in which she writes, I wish I could hit upon a pleasant track of thought, a thought indirectly reflecting credit upon myself, for those are the pleasantest thoughts. And very frequently, even in the minds of modest, mouse-colored people who genuinely believe that they dislike to hear their own praises, they are not thoughts directly praising oneself. That is the beauty of them. They are thoughts like this. If I concentrate hard enough, I can fly. I think this is what she means. Thank you. This poem is called Juice, and it refers to something, I don't know if you're aware of it, but in the trade, a reefer, and we're not talking about the kind that you smoke, a reefer is a refrigerated truck. They call them reefers. Juice. There was a time, and still a time, in which I drank a half gallon of carrot juice every day. I drove a reefer that still is, or may be, delivering juice to grocery stores at 5 a.m., snow, rain, to the back door guarded by cruel men. I pissed out the carrot juice, but the jug did touch my lips in heavy drafts, a pledge to reach the bottom before my shift was over. How many? No knowing. A landfill has them now, and still, and will, while carrot juice a sweetness I once loved, was and is spoiled. Okay. And this is called Shortcut. Shortcut. Wrote a story for a dying man, got to him in time, 2 days before. Wife read it to him on hospice bed, in family room, couldn't speak, a thumbs up, about a shortcut on a summer day, dog jaws snapping at our heels, nearly got us. Half happened, half didn't. 30 minutes to write, 2 minutes to read, briefly heard. And then this is my last one. Now this is a work in progress, and I'm sorry I got to do it. But since Devin opened the way with a political poem, Lord, will the flowering trees of Florida save us? After the hurricanes, roundabouts, red tide and strip malls, scrappers and school boards, pedestrian hit and runs, how many blooms must there be? Walk out at dusk in spring to see a yellow trumpet tree blowing bell-shaped blossoms on cue, anthers splitting open, pollen grains floating blindly on the Gulf of America breeze. Will wind mate seed to ovule so our state may have more sovereign beauty beyond sublime sundowns, the stately ballet of the sandhill crane on stilts, blood-red cap above stiletto beak. Down the street, a jacaranda sprays lavender panicles over a rusty Torino, lawn parked by a bicycle whose rusted petals have been fused by Florida holy water. This, says the bougainvillea in orange as answer. For it is 5 o'clock somewhere, and the parrot heads list into the tiki bar, smile boozily, and nod. Then the bartender festoons their goblets with umbrellas and petals and the occasional pistol whose signature masks the tequila for the bees, butterflies, and beetles, who follow the sugar with the devotion of acolytes, bearing the wreath of Aphrodite into the doomed temple, chanting prayers of buzz, buzz, and a woman cries, "Damn!" She is stung on her lip and drops her margarita, shattering glass onto her flip-flops, while the common Apis mellifera, legs laden with pollen, vibrates off and up, laden with its golden payload, the magic regeneration we take for granted. Will you come again, bougainvillea? So many lies to correct with your pink Elizabeth Angus, and insurance policies to write, or strike, or deny. Every first floor in Florida is concrete, cinder block, where it rots. Or shall we call for an aggregation of manatees to caucus for our future with their wise shadows in the shallows, water mammals worried about books, the ones dumpstered or kicked to the curb, piles and heaps and stacks of books pulled from racks and shelves labeled AP African American Studies or Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, doused with disinformation and torched by patriots into a bonfire that licks the capstones of Florida's libraries, universities, and courthouses, but never, no, never, the Dollar General. Lord, not the Dollar General, the almighty chain. No, chainsaw. There are 1,062 Dollar Generals in Florida, slicing the state into paper mache they will use for fake flowers when the flowering trees, oh, don't say it. Lord, would the flowering trees of Florida save us? Walk out at dawn to make sure they are still there. So far, the blossoms still come, a miracle of truth. Thank you.
right, thank you very much, Bubba.
Yeah.
I have a brief announcement, and then I'm actually going to hand it over to Devin to close us out with one final piece. We are reopening for submissions on Monday. Submission window is going to be for the next 3 months. I have a cap of 200 free submissions. You can submit and we have a $5 tip jar submission if you prefer to do that. Since you guys are all in this room, that means you live around here. There's a Gulf Coast of Florida feature. Submit to that. You'll be in a smaller submission pool, easier to find what you're doing. So yes, please check it out, magazine-1.com. Don't forget, if you go to magazine1.com, I don't know what happens. Please go to magazine-1.com. And with that, Devin, take us away.
Initially, I was hesitant and apprehensive and intimidated by the idea of presenting this poem in the midst of a writer's block, but I felt it would be appropriate for me to close this out, both in respect for what Bubba has contributed to the craft, and also because this is why I initially decided to participate for the magazine. I wanted to write a poem. This is titled February in Michigan, and it is dedicated to one of my personal favorite memories. The cedar limbs are stripped and bowing from the heavy snow. The animals are silent again, buried in their white pockets. When I turn black cherry wood to curling flakes of ash, and when the cinders start to burn, I watch the prints dotting my window. I feel young and pure again in the ever-deepening frost. The sidewalk gleams with ephemeral ice. Before the winter fully fades, I will weave it into my clothes, one stream and strand at a time. I will carry with me a piece of this day, and then another when it returns.